Hey, Freelance Business Week. This is Mikala Lark coming at you. I am pleased to be here doing the moderating the diversity and inclusive panel today. It is amazing lineup. We have 6 great panelists that's about to join us and introduce themselves. I'm been super excited for this day. Before I continue talking, because you know I can ramble, anybody who knows me, let me go ahead and get the first panelist on. Roscoe, welcome, Roscoe. How are you?
Awesome to be here. How are you?
I am great. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
So my name is Roscoe Nagin. I'm the Assistant Director for the Niagara Global Tourism Institute over here in wonderful Niagara Falls, New York. So the NGTI is a program out of Niagara University. We're here to help improve the efficiency of the tourism industry through 4 pillars: research, workforce development, entrepreneurship, and technology. And at the same time that we're helping the industry improve, we're trying to make sure that that benefit is felt in the community. So it's a mix of economic development and community development, all while partnering with an academic institution.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Roscoe. And next up is Dr. Lee Green. Welcome, Dr. Lee Green.
Thank you so much. It is certainly a pleasure to be here today for this very important topic. I will introduce myself. I'm one of the vice presidents at the Moffitt Cancer Center in beautiful Tampa, Florida. I am responsible for several buckets of work at Moffitt. I oversee all of the diversity and inclusion efforts at Moffitt. I oversee public relations and strategic communications. And although my role right now is very administrative, I still hold a senior faculty position at Moffitt in the Health Outcomes and Behavior program. And I've been at Moffitt for 15 years. So looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Green. Appreciate you being here. And next up, we have Jennifer Wheeler.
Hi.
Hello, Jennifer.
Hi. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for including me and inviting me. So this is an exciting, week. Freelance Business Conference week. This is awesome. So I'm Jennifer Wheeler. I am from Austin, Texas, and I work with small businesses to maximize people, productivity, and profits through diversity and inclusion consulting. I've developed my own model. It's called the Continuous Cultural Improvement Model. And I also provide education, resources, training. I'm a former teacher, so developing learning opportunities really lights me up. I'm all about joy and finding joy in your life and work. And most recently, I've been partnering with 2 friends, and we are on the cusp of creating a nonprofit that will provide resources, training, and education in an effort to reduce the wealth gap for women. So any woman is welcome, all women are welcome, and we're really, really excited about what we can offer and how we can help women connect with coaches, mentors, and resources around the country and around the world to help them really become more financially, not just savvy, but also how to develop themselves further so they can attain more wealth. That's a huge problem for women right now. So anyway, I'm excited about all of that, and I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And next up, Aaron Welsh.
Hello.
Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you very much for including me and inviting me to be on the panel. I am a longtime freelancer. I've been doing freelancing off and on for about 8 years. I'm a former Marine, so I'm a disabled veteran. I've been a business owner multiple times. I own a small digital marketing agency here in Austin, and been involved with Freelance Business Week. This is, everything's, knock on wood, going off very well, and super excited to be a part of this panel.
Fantastic, Aaron. Thank you so much for being part of this. Next up, we have Jeremy Teal.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Mikala.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm super excited. My air conditioner is working, thank goodness, because it's pretty hot. My name is Jeremy Teal. I am currently working full-time at a wonderful place called The Kind Clinic, where I work as the community engagement coordinator, where I am dealing with all things public relations, sexual health, and getting people tested and treated, which is super fun. But my freelance side is my Jeremy A. Teal creative side, where I do tons of facilitations, workshops, creating avenues for people to educate themselves, also helping people come up with workshops, which is super, super fun. Also a freelance photographer, videographer, florist, just an all-around creative. I couldn't focus on one thing, so I just said Jeremy A. Teal creative, because it's like, if it's creatable, I can do it. Let's do it. So I'm happy to be here and put my 3 cents in to this conversation.
Yes, Jeremy, thank you so much for joining. And next up, we have Lee Ann. Welcome, Lee Ann. How are you?
Hi, Mikala. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I love that Jeremy just used a tagline. So that's how I'll kick off my introduction. So I am an innovation strategist, the founding executive director and president of Venture Cafe here in Miami. And I believe that innovation is for everyone. And so Venture Cafe is focused on really looking at strategically helping to enable innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystems to be more inclusive, accessible, diverse, and better connected by working with both the organizations that are helping entrepreneurs as well as entrepreneurs themselves to be more holistic about how we design ecosystems. I'm also a recovering attorney, used to be a trial lawyer, and so those tools come in handy. And I do a fair bit of facilitation and writing all about topics like inclusive innovation, entrepreneurship-led economic development, and experiential leadership. Super excited to be here and dig into my favorite topic ever.
Welcome, Leanne. Thank you so much for joining. So that is all of your panelists. We are about to get started. We have several questions to go through. This will be a conversation the whole time. And I'm so excited to bring everybody on board. So let me get everybody back up here so that we can all see everybody all together. All right. We are all together. We're just going to dive right in, mainly because we have less than 60 minutes, and we have quite a bit of conversation to get through. And I know that the freelancers are excited to hear this conversation. So first up, we are going to start with Jennifer. Jennifer, in your own words, how would you define diversity and inclusiveness?
So in my work, I define diversity as it's about the people. Right? It's about the people. It's about their experiences. It's about what they bring to the table. All of the things that they have encountered, all of the things that they have learned. It's just everything about the people. So diversity is all about the people. And inclusiveness is about the process, the policy, the procedure, the structure that then elevates and lifts the people and keeps them involved in the conversation. So.
Next. I'm gonna start calling names.
Go for it.
I'll jump in. I like to use the term belonging. So when we take diversity, inclusion, and equity together, it gives us a sense of belonging. So you could certainly have diversity and not feel like you belong. Inclusion is sort of that next step where you feel like you are a valued member of the team. And then with equity, you feel like you're not at any disadvantage because of some demographic attribute that you might have. And so I like that term belonging. So when I walk into the cancer center where I work, I want to feel like I belong there. And because I'm, Black, I don't have any issues with regards to going in any meeting, any setting, and feeling like I belong there. So belonging is the term I think of.
I love that, Dr. Green. I really, that's how I feel when I go to different places. If I want to feel like I belong and very welcomed. Next.
I think, so I really like the framework of distinguishing between diversity being a quantitative measure and inclusiveness being a qualitative measure. So I think about diversity being evaluative. It is often a goal that companies try to use as a check mark or an objective measure. Are we creating a space that we can evaluate? But I think more important, I don't really focus on diversity, because when you focus on experiential, like what is the experience, the sense of belonging, but really going deeper to understand from other people's perspectives how they experience a space, an environment, and a organization. That's when you can achieve both diversity and inclusion, is if you focus on the experience, and that's personal, that's relational. It is very much driven by your ability to connect meaningfully with a person.
I was just going to kind of throw into that, because here I am working with communities in sexual health. And since we live in the wonderful United States of America, everyone knows no one has sex. Babies just come out of the sky. Right. So, when we're talking about diversity and we're talking about inclusiveness, I'm always thinking, how the heck are these people going to involve themselves in our services? How are they going to feel about these services? And not just my services, but the services that I help other people create and make more inclusive, right? It's about their perspective. It's about how they're going to react and interact with the things that we are trying to sell them. We're trying to give them to them. So that's kind of where I go from. And then I let really smart people like y'all do the analytics. I just do the talking.
And I think it's about getting people around the table, but also being able to empower each individual to make sure that they're bringing value and they're feeling comfortable in the space. It's not just about just getting everybody to the table and saying, okay, everyone's here, but also making sure that when they voice their experiences or opinions, there's value, real value that's given to it, especially when you're policy making or making decisions, that those voices matter and are heard and are part of the decision-making process.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting everybody to the table and creating a space where, everybody has an equal voice. Everybody's, thoughts, feelings, opinions, their experiences are equal and heard. Whether it's, a new set of interns, they have the same ability to go to the owner or the CEO and say, hey, I have this idea, what do you think? And everybody having that sort of space to where they do feel like they belong, and there won't be any sort of retribution or ostracizing just based on whatever.
Yes, I definitely agree. Next question. When we visualize a diverse and inclusive work environment, what does that look like to you, Dr. Green?
Oh, great question. First of all, it's not only that you can see it or visualize it, but you can feel it. It feels natural. It feels like it's supposed to be that way, and you don't struggle to see diversity of race, ethnicity, gender, religion, sexual orientation. You don't struggle to see those things present within the environment. But there might also be these physical things that you can see. So, for example, the diversity of the images around the organization. Do people, when they walk around the organization, do they see people that look like them? Gender-friendly, bathrooms, exam rooms, etc. Simple things like nursing rooms for mothers. We try to make sure that we have facilities where everybody, can, feel like they are supposed to be there. What about language? Does the language of the organization signify diversity? What does our leadership look like? Leadership not only of the organization, but of our board members. And so there are a lot of things that, you could do as an organization to make sure that diversity is visible.
Yeah, I totally agree. Representation is so important. Making sure that people feel that they see themselves, whether it's in the imagery or in the language or even in the org structure. Making sure everybody's got something that they can see that reflects their inclusion. Even something as simple as, making sure everybody's got a good chair, something so small, because people have different needs, but like for those of us lucky enough to be in abled bodies, they're all temporarily abled. So, making sure that everybody's comfortable in their space, and they have that reflection of who they are, and they can see that as very important.
Yeah, I think the indicators or the signals are an important aspect of designing for an inclusive environment. One of the things that Venture Cafe has done, I see like Livio and a couple other folks are here in the chat. We hosted programming for entrepreneurs and innovators where we'd see 300 to 400 people every single week. Now it's online, so it's a little bit different, but we've been thinking about those accessibility factors. And so I think that the messaging, both passive and active messaging that you are designing for people to experience your space or your environment is a critical factor in how you create spaces for inclusivity. So we used to have a sign, it was very simple, but as soon as people would walk in, it says, "You belong here." And we have t-shirts that say innovation is for everyone. And I know that seems super minor and so small, but that messaging made a big difference for people who wouldn't otherwise know. And then when we leave, we have a sign that says, "Thank you, we appreciate you, we value you." Whole Foods does the same thing. And so I think the messaging is important. But the second thing that is critical is how do you think about not just physical safety, but psychological safety. So Tim Clark has written this book, 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. So inclusion safety, learner safety, contributor safety, and challenger safety. How are you designing your space to make it open and clear that there are multiple layers of safeness within the organizational environment? And it starts with physical, but it goes much more deeper than that to psychological.
I like that. Moving on, what would you say is the most, I like getting that formal now. What would you say is the most difficult part about implementing diversity and inclusiveness into your business, Roscoe?
I think for me, the biggest part is an honest self-assessment. That one, it's important, but two, looking at yourself and saying, yes, we lack it in our organization. It's easy to say it and say I think oftentimes it's used as buzzwords without any meaning for folks. And I think it's really looking at, before you talk about doing it, really looking and saying, we have a shortness, we have a deficiency in it to actually properly address and make it an honest effort towards it.
So I'm thinking to myself about not just the landscape that I work in on a daily basis, which is supposedly very inclusive and diverse, right? But the truth is we are very specific sometimes when it comes to certain epidemics, treatments, things we want to get to people, and that makes a very exclusive group. So I think one of the hardest parts is to get people to understand some things need to be incredibly inclusive, and a lot of other things have to be a little more exclusive, because people have to feel very comfortable in those spaces. They have to see those images over and over again, and being able to get out of the way when you're not a part of that group is so hard. I just said it earlier, like I'm not the guy that does the analytics, I'm the talker. However, I'm not always talking. I wouldn't go into, a women's business week group and tell them how to be better business women. I wouldn't walk into a trans men's health seminar and tell them how to be men. Like that's not how this works. However, as their engagement coordinator, as the person helping them create the script, I can help them make words. I can help them put workshops together, but I'm not going to be on the mic, right? It's completely okay. I can sit in the back row and say, all right, I'm here if you need me, but this is y'all's show. Do your thing. Let's debrief afterwards. So I think that can be really hard for people implementing their inclusivity and their exclusivity and not realizing that they don't always have to go together.
Right. I think that's often an issue for employee resource groups, because they're employee resource designed and led by the employees, or based on whatever reason they want to have one. There's for women or for the LGBTQ community, or whatever you want to form around. Yeah. And sometimes people do feel left out of that. And as much as we want to be inclusive, I mean, it's factual that we do have different needs, and I think it's okay to be attempting to meet the needs within the workplace. Like you're saying, there's like a slight element of exclusivity, but it doesn't if you manage it properly, it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be a deal breaker. You can still empower and equip all the people in your organization through an ERG. Because there are different needs. There's different conversations to be had, right? Different policies to create and things. It's not a one size fits all. And I think that's sometimes what people want from diversity and inclusion. They just want it to fix everything.
So I was going to add that one other factor that makes it difficult, to the point about self-awareness that we never want to talk about, it's like the giant elephant in the room, is like bias and the intersectionality around bias, and the fact that they're like pronouns. Like, we all have biases, but we don't talk about them as much as we would want to talk about and be clear about like our pronouns. And so I think that for organizations to understand that bias is not as simple as, oh, implicit bias against particular racial groups or gender. It is so intersectional, and it also is beyond an interpersonal. So there's like 4 types of bias: systemic, institutional, interpersonal, and internalized. And that makes it really difficult to understand how you design a space that is diverse and inclusive when you have to design for multiple levels of bias, which I just think requires checking in. Like, it's not like a once a year we did our D&I like event and checklist. It is looking at how is bias playing out every single day and in every single circumstance, and then creating those de-bias examples or activities so that you can make sure that you are more self-aware, to the earlier point.
Wow, I like that question with y'all. I like that question. I love how you brought the exclusiveness as well as the inclusiveness, Jeremy, and then Leanne bringing in the different biases that we all naturally have. That is absolutely phenomenal. How can we genuinely just demonstrate an inclusive and diverse culture within our business without compromising others for the sake of that cause? Leanne.
So I think that's a really good question, and I disagree with the premise of the question, which is, I don't think it is a zero-sum game that you can have one or the other. I think it is more of an abundance like, this is how we do it. And so I think that I see inclusion work as relational work. And I wish that we would see it as relational work and not like indicators or metrics or to-do lists. And so when you approach inclusion as relational works, then you become less detached emotionally from the imperative around making people feel seen, valued, heard, accepted, and acknowledged. Because you take the time to get to understand who is in this space, what are their goals, what are their desires, and then you want to make space for them. And you want to make space for as many people. And even if people may be different, you can create a very diverse and inclusive space. Venture Cafe, for example, with our programming, we see 70% of people that attend are people of color. And when you disaggregate the percentage, it overrepresents our population in Miami. And that wasn't done because we just said, oh, we need to have more people of color. It's because we thought about who is not at the table, who do we see coming, what do they care about, and then asking them, how can we best serve you? And so I think that reframing the question a little bit gets you to a better strategy.
I cannot agree more. And the way I'll respond to this is, if you have a diversity and inclusion program that compromises others for the sake of diversity and inclusion, there's something wrong. Diversity and inclusion is not about taking anything away from others or compromising others. It's about creating an environment where everyone benefits. And I think that's what Leanne was getting at. Everybody is going to benefit from this program. And I would say that diversity and inclusion efforts should elevate everyone, not just certain populations. And, it is disappointing, quite frankly, that some of the negativity around diversity and inclusion is built around fear. Fear that if we elevate certain populations, that means that others will have to give something up. And it's not about giving anything up, it's about leveling the playing field. So I appreciate your comments, Leanne. I agree 100%.
I saw something there, like Aaron, like you was like, yeah, I want that. I really want to hear from you.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's the false narrative that it has been built to combat, equality. Taking from some to give to others. Like, it's not a zero-sum game. Belonging is not a zero-sum game, and again, the narrative that's been built around it. It's exactly what we're trying to fight against. So yeah, there's no taking from some to give to others. It's one of the things that we're trying to do better, because it has been taken from some and given to others for so long. Yeah.
Thank
Question.
you so much.
Can I pop in there for a thing? So again, not an expert here, but when I'm creating programs or I'm creating conversations as an ex-teacher, I always create blank space, right? Like that space where people can be like, huh, I didn't put that together until right now. And I do feel that this like zero sum y'all are talking about, and the idea that we are creating space, sometimes it's really difficult for people to not fill in the space. It's like, oh, we have all these rooms, we have all this time, we have. And it's like, that's wonderful. What don't you have? And what can you just not do? Let these folks do their thing. At Texas Health Action or Kind Clinic, which is where I'm at, we were really brave during this Black Lives Matter, like, go strong, go hard. Whereas we created a United Black Caucus in our organization, and we didn't ask for permission. We didn't ask for people to let us do a thing. We just did it because the space was there. We made the time on our calendars. We put our policies together. We started asking for the things we wanted. And that was because our organization left room for us to have space. So I think about the creation of it is awesome if you have the room, right? So I think making sure people leave some room for more would be good.
I like it. How has diversity impacted your ability to gain clients or advance within your career, Aaron?
Oh, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
My camera just blinked out on me.
It's okay. I can hear you though.
Yeah. I'm sorry. Say again. I cut out of it.
How has diversity impacted your ability to gain clients or advance your career within your career?
I'm a white male. I've had very little experience where, I've been an outsider. There have been moments in my life where that's been the case, and either I was fully accepted or I could just simply get out of that situation. And it was different. It was how things were for me. So a lot of times, especially early in my career, in digital marketing, boys club, definitely dominated by white people. Very few women, especially the tech industry. Very minorities were very underrepresented. So it's diversity has never been a problem for me because I am part of the group that is the majority. Even when my first business right out of the Marine Corps, I wasn't excluding people, but I also wasn't making an effort to make my workplace diverse. Thankfully I've come around and learned and evolved, and I'm making that very much a part of what I'm doing now, where I am, I am going and looking and purposefully hiring for diversity. And you know what, lo and behold, it's possible that those folks were there all along. I just wasn't looking.
I just feel like Leanne has something really great to say on this. I don't know why.
She has a lot. Yes,
No, I really want to elevate what Aaron said, because I think oftentimes we try to hire for a checklist or a puzzle, like, ooh, I need a Black person, I need an Asian person, I need a woman that identifies as like X, Y, or Z. And I think that we should stop and check our own biases and look for great people. Because I think that when you realize that you are often the one who is biased and preventing creating opportunities for career advancement or growth, not because you're intentional, because we all have implicit bias, and then you start looking for great people that are going to be the best for the job and understand where your biases may have evaluated them harshly or differently, then I think that's where inclusion and diversity can really help advance things. And for me, like, I'm a Black female lawyer that started practicing law at the age of 23. And so I have a whole host of stories about how it has potentially negatively and positively impacted my career. But I think what I focus most on is how do I not let that impact my ability to perform and my focus on purpose and my goals.
Very good.
How have you handled diversity challenges within the workplace or when networking? Jeremy.
Okay, so there's this wonderful cult called the University of Texas at Austin. They happen to rule the city that I live in. And if you didn't go to UT, then you're basically a peasant. And I did not graduate from college. I graduated with beautiful honors from Duncanville High School and have since used the workplace and networking to create an amazing skill set. However, that degree has challenged a lot of people's thought processes on how I can maybe do the job. And I say that has been my biggest challenge, having to prove to people that lived experience is still experience. And that I am as capable, if not more capable, in delivering the systems that you're trying to develop, because I didn't learn the system from a book. I lived it because I lived in the project. I did the free clinic when I was diagnosed with HIV. I took food stamps because nobody would hire me because I didn't have food, have a degree. So I understand these systems that y'all are creating as a consumer, as the person who's taking them. And I do find that to be my biggest challenge. However, with the networking, it's my superpower. I can convince anyone that I'm a genius. That's just true. That's just my superpower. And I love teaching that to people. It's about getting in there and figuring out what really matters to them. Even if you only have one sentence to go off of, keep playing it. But I'll teach y'all that later. Don't worry about that.
I like it. Jennifer, definitely. You had this look on there like you want to jump in there.
Well, I'll just say from my own perspective, obviously it's not necessarily a challenge for me to be in particular spaces, but I do find that sometimes when I go to networking events, if they're not more female driven, it's so white and it's so male and pale. Like, it's like, where are the girls? Where are the brown people? Like, where is anybody that is not a white dude? And sometimes it's just really hard, and men and women network differently, and we look at things from different perspectives. And so I don't have any issues with men, but it's kind of like some of these networking groups are just so male driven, and the energy is so male driven that it's hard for women to get in the conversation, because unfortunately we're still viewed as the second class, oh, you're over you, or you'll stand there trying to meet someone, trying to get into the conversation, and they just completely and consistently talk over you, ignore you, mansplain to you about their various things. So I have a tendency to stick with the chicks just because it's a little easier to get in the convo, which is not necessarily the best way to do it. But there are days when I don't feel like having those battles, and so I just go a different route.
I would I would think that all of us would agree that the best way to handle any challenge is to handle it head on. You know, if you see the challenge, what can we do as individuals and as an organization to address it, as opposed to sweeping it under the rug? I'll give one example. After the George Floyd murder, one of the things that I did for our organization was I did a video that was sent out to all 7,000 of our employees. And it was a video to talk about the issues, but also to let them know that even your vice president, who has a PhD, I experience issues of racism, discrimination, that I'm not exempt. And so I had a chance to share that with our team members. Well, probably 95% of the people who responded in a very positive way. But I had about 5% of our workforce who had some very negative comments about the video. And one piece in particular that they had negativity around, and that was I used the word white privilege. And there were some people who were brave enough to actually send me a note back, and they identified who they were, about 6 or 7 people. And one of the things that I did was I reached out to them directly and said, hey, I got your note. I understand you were not happy with my use of the term white privilege. And so we got together, met, talked about it. And to make a long story short, at the end of that, we ended up not agreeing completely on some of the issues, but walked away with a sense of mutual respect and understanding of the issue. And I could have easily have had thin skin and could have said, you know, the heck with those people, they don't understand. But I believe that I won some friends at the Cancer Center by reaching out to them just to say, hey, I heard you, I understand, I don't agree with you, but let's talk about it and see if we can come to some understanding. So tackling those issues head on, I think, is critically important.
Oh my God, Dr. B, I have to say this, that makes my skin crawl. Like, that absolutely makes my skin crawl. It is the idea that someone has the bravery in them, has that ability in them to just go straight at it. And I'm learning over time, it comes really with experience. It comes with age. It comes with seeing it and learning how to adapt to it. But I think what you're saying is when you are there, you know, like when you're there, then that's time to do that. And I think a lot of this like this inclusive conversation is about teaching people or helping people get those skills so they can have those conversations and leave feeling like they didn't lose. Because I definitely feel like I lose on a weekly basis with a lot of conversations that we are in this panel we would walk away with like, okay, that was conversation number 2 of 300, right? Mm-hmm. But I still feel defeated. Like I absolutely still feel defeated, but I try again next week. So I guess that's a little pushback, but also great job. Like you're amazing.
Yeah.
Jeremy, did you just call me old? Did you?
Experience. But I think that Jeremy raises like a really important point that I think we should not lose, which is how we frame these interactions is so critical to how we experience the outcome and how we will approach it. And so I was having this conversation with my team actually this morning, which was really about if we think about entering these spaces through a lens of empathy. My goal is not to win or lose or to convince you that my point is right or wrong. It's to understand and see from the other side why this person reacts in this way to the situation. Then you will have won because you had an open dialogue versus thinking about, I need to convince you that what white privilege is. And I think on white privilege point, Brene Brown has a really great podcast, and she had a conversation with the author of How to Be Anti-Racist. And one of the things that he said that I think is really critical is when we talk about systems of oppression and systems that are designed to marginalize, we forget, particularly as people of color or people that identify with a specific and distinct marginalized group, that we are victims, but the people that are upholding systems are both upholding and they're victims. because they didn't ask to be part of the system by virtue of their color of their skin or their privilege either. And so I think that that point of empathy, to understand that the people that you often see as opposing you or holding privilege are both victims and upholding a system. And so the goal should be dialogue and empathy, in my opinion, versus like, how do we kind of go to attempt?
Correct. I think empathy is huge. I really, empathy is just, in my opinion, and for me, empathy is like, it's not the magic bullet, but if we could all find our empathy for each other, it would certainly elevate everything that we're doing, not only in this space, but in our entire world. The fact that people are so incredibly selfish, I mean, it's public, it's out there. It's the lack of empathy. It's the refusal. It's a refusal, really, I think, for a lot of people. A refusal to put yourself in the place of another person. It's just, I think that's it. You're so right. And
it's realizing that these uncomfortable conversations have to happen and being realistic about it. Like, people are afraid to have these conversations and be honest and be empathetic, because we're all human beings. We're all raised a different way. We all have different experience. But at the end of the day, to move forward, we have to understand that we're going to reach a level of discomfort when talking to each other about our viewpoints. And people walk too much on eggshells about not wanting to offend the other person or being too kind of belligerent with their viewpoint. But at the end of the day, we just have to prepare ourselves that to move forward, we have to have these honest and uncomfortable conversations with each other.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. I just want to continue on with that question, but I know we have more, but I feel like, Leanne, you can build a workshop on that. Like, that, given so much food for thought. What are some creative ways to proactively market and promote to candidates from underrepresented communities?
Okay, well, I have to also shout out the United Black Caucus of Texas Health Action. We are so Texas Health Action was formed as a community organization to provide sexual health services to people for free, and it was an uphill battle. However, the thing that I think we did perfectly is we were all already leaders in our demographics. Right. So I held down the Black gays, the Black trans women. I hold us down. And there are others of us who hold them down. So by doing that, when a job position comes available, we already know who's ready for that job, because we've been seeing them do that work, but they didn't know that that was a skill set that created a job. I didn't know community engagement was a job until I got this job. I thought I'd just be good at talking to people until someone in my community told me, oh no, people go to school for that. Like, people get trained for this. There are people who can't even talk to a wall. It's like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. I thought everyone was good at this. However, that was a creative way we did it. We did it kind of grassroots. You just tell a person, and it's as simple as sending a link. Hey friend, I think you'd be great at this job. Take it or not, just saying I think you'd be great at the job. I'll shoot you a reference if you need it. That's a creative way for me.
I also think things like, Venture Cafe, when we did in-person gatherings, I actually saw the in-person gathering as a natural open house. I know, like, when you're selling a house and you're trying to like make a sale, you do an open house. Like, you create a space for people to understand what it is like to experience this environment. And so to the extent that you can, I love Jeremy's point about like having those networks and those nodes in the experience, like the experts, which are the people that have the lived experiences, those communities, is great. But separately, think about ways how you can open your business, open your organization, so that the first time someone interacts with you from a diverse or underrepresented group is not when they're applying for the job. It should never be the first time is when someone hits send on an application. They should be familiar with your organization. So mentorship programs, open houses, developing your network, those are the ways that you start to think. It's like being prepared. And so you prepare yourself to recruit while you are not in recruiting season.
Well, and one of the things we want to do with our nonprofit is to partner with businesses so that they now have access to the women who are accessing our programs, our resources, our mentors, and so on. So I think additionally, there are partnerships that you can explore, making contacts, reaching beyond your own network, right? Go past what you where you are and just expand. I think, again, just go back to that expansive empathy and reach out and just get familiar and get to know people, and don't just stay in your own little, I mean, that's not necessarily creative, but just don't stay in your own little bubble, in your own little world, and expect people to come to you. You have to actually be intentional and reach out and have, be purposeful.
And in our experience in working with our workforce development programs, exposure is key. Exposure at the earliest level. We work in tourism and hospitality in an underrepresented community where we take our students, we partner with individuals in the community, and we show them different experiences in and around the industry, but you're building the fact that you belong here. This is not something that you're not supposed to be in. This is for you, no matter where you grew up, and really showing them, not just showing them like you're dangling a carrot and so you got to get there, but helping them see the path of how you can get there and making them feel confident in any position that they go to that they belong in the room.
Yeah.
Yes. Like, I'm over here picking and choosing through questions because I don't want to cut you off. Like, y'all are killing it. Next, what are some ways that people can get their entire company, professional, association, and or business on board with being more diverse and inclusive?
So to Leanne's point of like the natural open house that is the event or the internship or the those things, I really feel like that's one of the better ways to do it. It's to get people that work with you to meet the people that you're working for, and to have them in the same room so they can have access. For instance, our CEO is incredibly accessible, sometimes a little too accessible, and he's at our events and he's just talking to everybody. He's like, I need you to come up here and make this keynote real quick. You are just buzzing too much. But the truth is, the kid who got his first HIV test yesterday came to this event thinking that he was only going to see nurses, but he actually met our board and he met our marketing team who put people on billboards, and he met our cab. Like, it's about that. It's about getting the people to meet the people so they can understand that we're not just doing this in a bubble. These people aren't numbers. They're not files. They're people, and they show up. They show up places. So that is how I get us on board, is basically forcing them all in the same room.
I think that's smart. But I think beyond forcing people in the same room, which I agree with, like, I think the most important way to get people on board is to tell stories. Stories, as you know, are the key to creating emotional connectivity. It's what triggers the part in your brain. I think it's called like the reticular activating system that switches between information that goes in your short-term memory and your long-term memory. And the things that are designed to stick in your long-term memory are emotive. They're visual, they're stories, they're experiential. And so I always think that if you can design an experience that gets people to create emotionally resonant situations where their why is linked to a story or an experience, that's how people get on board. So just like Jeremy said, like, make them come to an event, having them engaged. But honestly, that vulnerability and emotional connection that comes with sharing the stories of why it matters. Why, for me, why do I work with youth of color? Because I've seen people that have been told you could never go to college when they have straight A's just because they're Black and they're in low-income communities, right? And so the stories, I think, are the most important tool for creating buy-in that's necessary.
Absolutely. I go back to my example of that video that I sent out. And Leanne, you're correct. You're absolutely correct. A part of that message was a story. I shared a story about an experience that I had that I was being discriminated against. And people didn't remember anything else about what I said, but they remembered that story. And that story opened up so many doors for dialogue across the institution. And so once that door was open, then I had the opportunity to talk about some of the other things across the Cancer Center that we needed to be thinking about around diversity and inclusion. But you're dead on. That story was what opened up the doors for us to have those conversations.
And I think you're so right, Leanne, because when you start sharing your stories, I think that is where you can find the empathy that is necessary. Because I would find any human, hard pressed to find any human who has never experienced bullying, who has never experienced, some level of harassment. These are common things. We have experienced them on different levels, to different degrees, in different situations, and in different circumstances. But at the bottom of all of it, at the very root and core, is that feeling. How did you feel, right? And you can connect through feelings through storytelling. So I think you are so spot on.
Thank you. Thank you. So this last question, I want to hear from everybody. What is the most impactful advice you can share to help others make their business and or professional association more diverse and inclusive?
Well, I will start here. Number one, own your business. That makes it much easier to do. But honestly, just be cognizant, be aware, be intentional. Have this as something that's in your mind when you're trying to make your business more diverse or trying to bring more diversity and be more inclusive in your professional associations. You've got to do it. Like, you've got to think about it, and thinking about it is step one, but it's not the only thing. You've got to take action. Mm-hmm. And it's in the doing that makes it real. So you got to do it.
I'll jump in and say, I tell folks to listen with empathy. Listen with empathy, and think before you speak. Listen, and then think before you respond. Listen. Formulating your response while the person is talking.
So what are you trying to say?
What?
So what are you trying to say?
And I think for me,
that's my advice. Listen with me, speak before you speak.
I think for me, it's fighting the fear of having these uncomfortable conversations. When the fear seeps in, we don't share. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. That's what makes us unique. And going to things, obviously, in an empathetic way, but fighting the fear that I don't want to have this uncomfortable conversation. I don't want to step on eggshells, but we have to have these conversations. And I think having more trust in, once again, in the people in your organization, that you hired them for a reason. You not just for the work that they do, but obviously I think if you're hiring into your organization for mission, vision, and culture match, that you should be able to go into these situations where you can go into it without fear, but also being realistic that it's not smooth sailing all the time. We're human beings. We're gonna have road bumps along the way, but fighting that fear where we ignore talking about things is probably what I would throw out there.
And I think because I work at a large institution, I think it's important to start at the top. Mm-hmm. You have to ensure that the leadership of the organization truly embrace diversity and inclusion. And if it does not start at the top, it will be very difficult. It makes my job a whole lot more difficult if the CEO, the president are not on board with diversity and inclusion efforts. And that's because they set the stage. They set the stage for the organization. And if they are not on board, not only the CEO, other executive leaders, then they're just talking and they're not walking the walk. As you know, it's just lip service. Mm-hmm. And so the work that I do and how successful that work is really depends on the support that I get from the CEO's office, because they set the tone. And I'll give one quick example. So one of the things that I wanted to do at our organization was to do mandatory education for all of our leaders. Well, the CEO said, well, we're not going to do mandatory, but we will get 100% of our leaders to take this this course. And I said, well, good luck with that. because if it's not mandatory, people are not going to do it. Make a long story short, we got to about 80% of our leaders who took this course. Once we got to 80%, the CEO himself started making calls, started sending emails to those individuals to say, this is important. You need to take this training. You need to get it done. And at the end of the day, because of his calls, because of his involvement, we got to 100%. If he had not been involved, there is no way we'd have gotten to 100%. So it's just important how they get involved, how they get engaged in terms of making an impact.
Yeah.
So I think y'all are so smart and amazing. I am a young little baby gay professional, and I will say something that a piece of advice that I'm getting right now and I'm having to learn to be very comfortable with is do the work how you know how to do it, but don't be afraid to leave. Don't be afraid to say no. Don't be afraid to push back. And I say don't be afraid, but obviously you're going to be afraid while you're doing it, but kind of ride through the fear, ride through that uncomfortability, because it's as uncomfortable for them as it is for you. I can almost guarantee it. It might be different levels, but it's the same uncomfortable. It's just like, I don't want to be having this conversation. I don't want to be doing this with you. I just want to clock in, get my check, and pay for my Beamer and go home. Like, that's what I want to do. But, I think it's okay for people to not do it too. And it's good advice for me. It's like, you know what? Sometimes you fight all you can fight. It's just move on. Just move on.
I love that. Or Tesla.
Or Tesla.
But I think on my end, I would say make people your why. I think we often focus so much about, the association or the organization and the infrastructure, and we forget that those are just technologies. Those are tools. Those are mechanisms that are powered by people. And so I think that the way to make any organization of people more diverse and inclusive is to focus on people. We've been able to connect over 50,000 people in 4 years, partner with 1,000 organizations in that same time period. And those numbers are cool, but I love the fact that I can say Livia or Joni, I see them here. I know them. I know their story. And so I think that is the critical, advice that I focus on every day, which is people, purpose, and impact. That's my mantra, and people is number one. And so we can't lose sight of the fact that people are what drives or what institutions are built off of, and not some people, but all people.
Any last words? This has been a beautiful conversation. All right. Thank you so much. The comment section has just gone so crazy. One by Kevin Bakewell. What an awesome panel. Actually, I believe this might be for you, Jennifer, by Emily Leach. We love to have your group inside the Mighty Freelance Network to work with our women members. Again, Kevin is on fire over here. I love it. Be Active Business, Be Active LLC. Hi, everybody. I'm so stoked for this talk. Marie, she's one of the leads out of Buffalo. Brought Roscoe on board. So glad. There are so many different comments. Just keep going and keep going through. If you ever get a chance, definitely see it. Again, with Emily Leach opening up on the playing field for everyone to participate. And this becomes norm in our society. Yes. And you've mentioned her name so many times, Leanne, with Jonas. Great conversation. As well as Livia, systemic, institutional, group, individual biases. Very true. There's no way I can get through all of the comments over here, but y'all have absolutely been fantastic. This was better than I could have ever imagined. Having this conversation with all 6 of you, bringing in all of everything, all of your knowledge, all of your experience to make this such a wonderful panel. This also will be available for replay. Definitely share it out as much as you like. Absolutely. This has been amazing. And thank you so much for agreeing to do this. This is beautiful. And just to say to everybody, continue working with diversity, inclusive, and equity. Absolutely continue the education. Education is important for all of us, because we all have work to do. If we feel like we've gotten to the point that we arrived, we are so far behind. So literally, we really, really, really need to continue this journey, continue having the conversations, whether they're uncomfortable or not. Continue having those conversations. Be bold and be brave. As Brene Brown says, be bold, be brave. Thank you again. That is our time. We are closing out. I did not look at the schedule. I wanted to say who's up next. I'm so sorry for whoever's up next. I'm so sorry. I did not mean to not know that. But that's the next speaker that is up. Don't laugh at me, y'all. That's the next speaker that is up. It has been such a beautiful time. Tomorrow, Jennifer will be speaking at 12:30 Central. 12:30 Central. Please join her talk. Get in. Listen, she has so much knowledge to give to us. So definitely 12:30 Central, sign up. If you have people who have not signed up or registered and still want to be part of this or still want to see the replays, 2020.freelancebusinessweek.com. It is not too late to sign up. Thank you again. That is the end of our broadcast.
Thank you, Mikala.